All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Batting 1,000, where we talk to the heavy hitters in the mortgage industry. And I am so delighted to have back again Kristin Messerli. Kristin, if you remember, was with us on season 1. She's back here in season 3 because we just loved chatting with her last time. Just to give you a little bit of introduction on Kristin, she is a strategist and speaker on millennial and Gen Z housing trends. She is dedicated to fostering financial literacy and homeownership among young adults, which is a super cool mission. And she is the co-founder of the nonprofit FirstHome IQ. Kristin works to deliver homeownership education to individuals before the age of 25, something that I think is so absolutely critical in our industry and something I'm excited to talk about. Kristin, welcome back. So glad to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me back. Great to be here.
It is great to have you here. So let's just dive right in. Look, you are committed and you have been for all of your career. I mean, you've been doing this for a long, long time. You've been a major voice in the industry for many, many years. Lots and lots of people follow you. Talk to me about what prompted this whole move into FirstHome IQ. Talk about what that is, what it stands for, what the shortage of education is. I'm just going to give you an open runway here. Just help us understand what you're up to now and how important this is to our industry and to our communities and our customers at large.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I'll start with just sharing a little bit of how I got here. I started my career originally as a social worker, which I think I mentioned on the last call,
Yep.
and it was, at that time I did a lot of education with high school students and in a lot of groups, and I found that that's something I wanted to do at scale. Like, people were constantly coming into in conversations with me with huge financial issues and having predatory lending, practices on them. And it was a real challenge. And I thought, and then as I started getting into, later in life, I found that so many of my friends, wherever they were coming from, their socioeconomic background, whatever, they were also, falling into, like, just not understanding basic financial principles. And so it's something I've always wanted to be able to do, is solve for that challenge. So after I had the company Cultural Outreach for about 8 years or so and sold that to NAMBA. And during that time, I was working with lenders in reaching underserved communities and reaching the next generation. And so I feel like it kind of was time to marry those together, say, like, okay, we can come together as an industry to have this impact. There are people that I know want to reach the next generation. They want to reach underserved communities. And that's something that we desperately need as a society. So that was kind of the idea in coming together with Dave Savage, Todd Bookspan, and a bunch of other, industry leaders, to be able to say, it's time for us to come together as an industry and solve for this.
Awesome. So talk me through, and the audience through, what you guys are doing to create education for people under age 25. What is that going to look like strategically? And what are some of the things you're going to be educating on? Walk us through kind of the process of the curriculum, like you and I talked about earlier, of where you're taking people from and to, and then how that's going to impact the industry.
Yeah, so we've designed all of our content and programs around the idea of hitting money milestones. So, whenever you're 16, you are getting your first job, you should learn about budgeting, saving, and investing. We
Yep.
don't learn anything about that, and
Nope.
and then by the time you're turning 18, when you're getting credit card offers and student loan debt offers, you should know how your credit score works, and you should know how debt management works. And we're not getting any of that education. And so by the time you turn 21, that's another one of our money milestones. You're getting sent off into the world. You're graduating college or just starting your career. So that's when we want to make sure you know how to buy a home. And we've actually extended, this idea of our curriculum going up to 25. We've extended it up to the age of the first-time homebuyer at 35. because we've realized that by the time you're 35, which is the average age of the first time home buyer, you still don't know the basics of buying a home or a lot. And you've often made a ton of financial mistakes. So I think we might have been talking about this before, but there's so a lot of people who are in the research that I've done, millennials and Gen Z, don't start the home buying process because they don't feel confident in their own knowledge about buying a home. So there's a bunch of other barriers around affordability and all that kind of stuff, but there's a huge barrier that's just around like confidence and knowledge. And so that's our whole concept is, let's start early. So as a nonprofit, we at FirstHome IQ, we're delivering curriculum to schools and working directly with nonprofits to deliver that. But then we're also working with industry professionals through what we call an ambassador program to help them reach first-time homebuyers and to really cover that span of those money milestones.
Okay, I want to come back to that ambassador program in a minute because I really want you to talk about that. But let's start with the beginning of where you're starting the education, and that is in the schools, okay? And through not-for-profits that you're working with that are promoting this to 16-year-olds is the starting age. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's around
Okay.
the starting age. Yeah. Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about that starting curriculum. I'm assuming we're talking about how to manage your money, how to handle credit and debt, how to make sure that you understand some of the basic elements of what it takes to be a good financial steward of the things that you have. Talk about that a little bit to help us understand a little bit more of what specifically you're teaching them in that process, and what kind of numbers of people we're looking at are getting trained, how many schools we're looking at, those kinds of things.
Yeah, so we are working with them on basic money management, building a budget. We're introducing investing 101, what the idea of compound interest is. And,
Right.
we can go more advanced later, but that's the kind of the introduction. And then one of the key parts of this program that I love is the psychology of money or your relationship with money. So that's a whole module, and something we focus on is helping people understand like what they're coming from, where they're coming from, and how that might influence their money management and money behaviors. And that's been really fun. I've like listened in on some of the classes and hearing the students process that, like, oh yeah, my parents weren't very good with money and it was really stressful around money, so I could see how that could influence the way I manage money as well. And just that kind of self-awareness, I'm like, that alone is going to change your life. But that's the idea, is where we're starting there. I've realized it's when I first started putting together a curriculum, I thought, okay, this is going to be for high school students. This will be for college students. This will be for first time homebuyers. But it really, unfortunately, most people haven't received any kind of education or financial literacy education. So the basic stuff is working really well with all ages. Of course, by the time you're buying your first home, you want some details around what it means to buy your first home, and you can get more advanced the older you get, but it's still really, we want to carry people through in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming for them. So and then in terms of how many people we've educated, we have hit over 1,000 at this point. So we're over 1,000 students have
Right.
been educated. We are in 3 schools, and we have several nonprofits that we're starting to work with. Big Brothers Big Sisters in LA is one, and there's some others that we're talking with that could really scale the program. So I feel like we're at such a crucial point right now, which is why I'm really happy to have this conversation right now, but where we can make a huge impact. We just need to we're moving into scale, in that
Yep.
position. So.
It's interesting when you think about it, because a 16-year-old today, they were born in 2008. That's when the mortgage meltdown was happening, 2008, 9, and 10.
Wow. Yeah.
So they came out of, and if they're, in their mid-20s, like they were in the midst of that. They were 10, 12, 15 years old. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before, but my wife, Laura, and I, we have 4 kids, and now they're all raised, and we have grandkids, and they're all married off. But we were actually youth pastors for 10 years. We had
I
over
didn't
100
know
kids.
that.
We had over 100 kids that we trained for almost 9 years here in the Panhandle of Florida. That's why we moved down here, was to start a youth group and really help kids to really understand how to live life, how to become adults that were going through difficulties and struggles in many cases. It was very fun. So I think back to those days of how much they were going through in those times and how powerful a program like this would have been for them. And
Yeah.
I just think what you're doing is absolutely incredible because they need to understand money, but they need to understand credit and debt. I mean, you look at debt statistics today. August of this year, the statistic came out that the average household in the US today has $104,000 in consumer debt. That's unheard of. That's
Mhm.
unbelievable when you think about that. And we all know that from a housing standpoint, if your credit, goes south, and kids won't know this unless somebody teaches them this, you're going to have a difficult time buying a home. And if you do buy a home, it's going to cost you a whole lot more. So equipping them early and young to do that and understanding how to buy, I think is just an incredible thing that you're doing. Let me ask you this question. How can the audience watching this, how can they help you guys to get into schools and not-for-profits? Is there ways that lenders, for example, can sponsor these programs on your guys' behalf that benefits them to show goodwill within their community, but also benefits you guys to get much more reach quickly? Is that a possibility?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that is I mean, our whole mission has been around how do we come together as an industry to solve for the financial literacy crisis, and that is absolutely our biggest need right now is around more resources. So one really basic way is if you are connected to a school or a nonprofit where you think that this could be an introduction could be made, we love that introduction. That is how we've gotten into the schools that we have so far. And if you've worked with schools before, you know that it can be challenging to get the implementation in. You have to really have that connection. And but yeah, in terms of financial resources, that is what is holding us back from being able to scale next. And so that any kind of sponsorship, we have Movement and Churchill sponsored this year, and we've started to build out a lender partnership program and corporate partnership program where those sponsorship dollars, then we promote how we're partnering with you, doing press releases and things like that help support the brand and the connection there. And then of course we that goes to directly support us being able to scale the program in other underserved communities and with schools and nonprofits.
That is awesome. What is the and maybe you don't you have this exact number, maybe you don't, but what is the average cost to sponsor a student? So if a lender said, "Hey, I want to go and I want to train 300 students," what would that look like from a cost standpoint to provide the curriculum, provide the support, everything you do? What does that look like?
That's a great idea to get it down to the individual student. The way that we've looked at it so far is $10,000 will help us to through the school implementation. So that's like the connection with the school, the actual rollout of the curriculum, and that takes a lot more time than I think originally I thought this will, but that's kind of how we've allocated that kind of intensive full curriculum rollout. If we did something more like or in same thing with the nonprofit as well. So like with Big
No.
Brothers Big Sisters, the meetings and the connecting of the volunteers and things like that. The other way that we've looked at this is through sponsoring ambassadors. So we have ambassadors who are loan officers primarily, or anyone in the industry who want to educate their communities. And so lender partners may sponsor a certain number of ambassadors. And ambassadors, the program is $200 a month. So then that goes to support the loan officers getting their brand, personal brand, and education access and support around reaching first-time homebuyers, and then also still the brand recognition as well.
So when somebody's an ambassador, they're paying $200 a month. Take that a little bit deeper for me. Help the audience understand what do they get? What does that do? How is that implemented? Walk me through that process.
Yeah, the ambassadors have access to all of our presentation materials that cover all of those money milestones that we talked about, first time
Okay.
homebuyer presentations, and then we release a playbook every month or every other month that supports them connecting with first time homebuyers, whether that be increasing social media, or we just did one with Tim Brahim on delivering a database marketing, and then on a monthly basis, we do a challenge. So it's like a new send this exact email or customize it or whatever to your database, or create a short video and we'll edit it for you and you can deliver that to your database. But something that just helps support people with reaching the next generation. And we do a monthly strategy call with top leaders in our industry that support, like we talk about what are some of the best practices you're using to reach first time homebuyers. But in the ambassador portal, they have a bunch of resources. So like past playbooks and social media templates, video templates, scripting they can use, and a bunch of marketing resources in addition to those presentation materials as well.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
my recommendation today is for anybody watching this, you need to be, if you're in the business and you're a loan officer, you need to be an ambassador. I understand that my good friend Sean Bonoshin, who was on here last session, is an ambassador. So if Sean's doing it, everybody wants to do it because he is the man in the mortgage industry. No question about that. So
Yeah.
love that program. All right, talk to us a little bit about how does this benefit lenders? What is the net tangible benefit that the lender sees out of this program?
So, I mean, if we think about what we were originally talking about around some of the barriers for first-time homebuyers, we know that there's a huge lack of confidence. In fact, feeling of lack of access is a huge barrier that we found over and over. Over half said that they feel homeownership is not within reach for the next generation.
Yeah.
Another data point is just this lack of trust, and 2 in 3 millennials said they don't think lenders are trustworthy or reliable. So when you think about this, like lack of education, lack of access, lack of trust, by partnering with a nonprofit that delivers education, that's going to, one, build your brand as someone who is trustworthy, who is a bright light in what feels like a dark space. So there's the brand recognition, and then there's also the actual education piece of building trust through delivering education. And I think the big piece here is also empowering your loan officers to understand how to connect with the next generation, because for so many, so many home buyers, we feel very overwhelmed when it comes to thinking about how to start the process of buying a home, or what I need to know. I think I partly in this whole industry because I get so overwhelmed by financial information or financial literacy, and I constantly have these like moments of crisis, like why am I doing this, because this is so challenging for me. And but I think that's why. It's because I want people to understand that that you can start this process. You can go through this step by step, even if it feels very overwhelming. And so if loan officers understand, here's how I can build trust, here's how I can deliver education, and then a home buyer sees them on social media or in their community, they're going to feel like that's someone I can connect with. That's someone I could actually overcome that barrier. So I think, from a lender's perspective, there's the actual access to the next generation as well as trust building around their brand.
Well, and I love the fact you said Movement Mortgage and Churchill Mortgage, both great companies in the industry. Churchill, I know, works with Dave Ramsey and his team. So they've always been an advocate of financial literacy. And I know that Movement Mortgage, with all the schools that they've created, they
Mm-hmm.
have an incredible charitable heart for students and children. So it's just really cool to see that you've got already major lenders within our space that have stepped up and they've made commitments and they're supporting you. Hats off to them. I mean, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll say, we're new. We launched our ambassador program a year ago. We launched the nonprofit just a little before that, and so we want to work together as an industry in whatever way is going to be best fitting. So, like for, the way that Churchill is leveraging our materials is a little bit different from the way movement is. And yeah, we're working with the movement schools and giving them the curriculum. But if
Awesome.
anyone on this call is just passionate about this cause, I would love to hear from you. I want your input, Dale. I want people to say, like, here's how I can see this being beneficial in my community, or how we can grow this together. Because I think that that's when we're going to really see a major impact in our society. So.
Well, and on a human level, I mean, I think we can all buy into the fact that helping the future generation to be more financially literate and to expand home ownership obviously is a great thing. On a business level, it's a no-brainer. You're creating your future customers is what you're doing. You're educating them now. So not only do they create loyalty and trust towards you, like you talked about a moment ago, as a loan officer, as a lender, but down the road, now when they come to you, they're way more confident, they're way more knowledgeable. I mean, we live in a world today, I think the last statistic I saw is the average purchase price of a home is $405,000 in the US in 2024
Wow.
at a average 6.5 to 7% rate. That's a pretty large payment for somebody who's, a millennial or a Gen Z. And they're like, whoa, how am I going to afford that? So when you talk about lack of confidence, fear, all of those emotions rush in instantly. It can all be solved with education because there are a lot of answers and a lot of programs out there that they don't even know about that will help them get there. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that for a few minutes. You and I kind of talked backstage a little bit, and I see things in the news like 40% of first-time buyers still think you need 20% down to buy a home, and I'm just mesmerized that in today's day and age, there's that lack of knowledge. What are some of the areas of lacking knowledge and need for education that you see as you look around the industry and consumers today?
Okay, so we launched the FirstHome IQ quiz about a year ago. The majority were saying 10% or 20% you needed. And so, it's wild to me that is still such a huge challenge. And I think so many of my friends, I'm constantly telling people, like, you don't have to save for that. I live in Los Angeles, so people think that, oh, well, this is just not something available to me. And they're thinking about the 20%. And then also just basic things like what kind of credit score you need. When I was watching people take the quiz that we put together, I had a friend of mine who's in her 40s, very successful, and she's taking it. And there was a question in there about FICO, like what's the most common credit scoring model. And I since taken that out because I don't feel like it's totally necessary.
Yeah.
But she's like, I don't know. I mean, she's like freaking out. I actually should publish the video because I think it's so funny. But she's like, I don't know. I think I've heard of FICO, and like hits FICO, and it was wild to me to watch her and think like, wow, okay, this is a successful person who just doesn't know the first thing and she was going through the process of buying a home and so overwhelmed. And so anyway, it's just I think for people who have not been in this industry, it is really overwhelming. And then even for me, I grew up in the industry. My dad bought a home. I mean, my dad works in the business, and I had bought a home previously. But when it came time for me to buy a home in LA, I felt really, really overwhelmed. And I think it's a, like you said, it's a very emotional process. So I think there's a lot in terms of educating around credit, and down payment would be like the biggest things. And then just helping people understand what the steps are, or what the immediate steps are, because people start to research and they get really overwhelmed.
Yep.
And that kind of pushes them out.
Yep. Yeah, I've done a national radio program since 2010. It was originally through Moody Radio out of Chicago, where I authored a book for consumers on mortgages and how to get a mortgage and all that kind of thing, and did that radio program for years and years and years. Still do it today with Rob West on the Moody network, and then several other networks every month. And it's shocking to me when we do that program. There's 1.1 million people that listen into that program, and they don't know really anything about a mortgage or the process or understand it. Even people who've been through it before are very confused in today's day and age as to the different programs, the products, the processes, how it works. And here's a news flash, okay? Lenders watching this, executives watching this. We're not making it any easier through our loan officers a lot of times. I listen to way too many calls from my clients that are recorded where I'm like, oh my gosh, you're speaking things I don't even understand, and I'm in the business for 41 years. So if I don't understand it, I'm pretty darn sure a consumer don't understand it. We need some basic education that not only is for consumers, but actually makes it more easy for the loan officers to communicate to people and not say things that are so mortgage heavy that the bar's just like, I don't know what you're saying, but they're not going to say that. So they just go, oh, yeah, sure. They agree with them. And then they make a bad choice or they just go away and go somewhere else, is what
Yeah.
happens at the end of the day.
Yeah, whenever we've been on our now third iteration of our core presentation materials, and because whenever I put them together, and I am speaking a really basic language of financial literacy, but I still used a lot of jargon and terms that I didn't think about, like, oh, this is not something that a
Yeah.
student or a first time homebuyer even is going to resonate with, and so we've had external people come in and say like, okay, I'm not understanding this, or and or now like, how do we put it in a way that helps personalize it for the consumer? Because I think that's a lot of it too, is like, it can't be this theory. It can't, because finances are so stressful and carry so much emotional baggage as well. You have to make it so simple and personalized in a way that really connects with people.
Yeah. In all the years that I've trained, I've had this principle that I've taught forever that I call the two truths of every consumer, every new consumer that you talk to. And those two truths are, number one, it's a stranger talking to a stranger about the single largest, most personal and complex financial decision in their lifetime. And then rule number two, they've never had a great experience. The number of borrowers who have a lifetime loan officer, I've asked loan officers this question all the time. Okay, do you all have an attorney that you basically use for your life? Oh yeah. Dentist? Yeah. Doctor? Yeah. Hairdresser? Yeah. Okay, what about loan officer? Everybody's got a hairdresser that, man, don't want to lose my hairdresser. That would be bad. But we don't have a lifetime loan officer, and we should. The better you educate, the better the chance that's going to happen. Because once they understand that you understand them, you understand the marketplace, and you can easily transition between the complex to make it simplistic to the consumer, they're never going to want to work with anybody else. They don't care if your rate's 0.25% higher or 0.5% higher. If you can help them get in the home with an affordable payment and educate them through the process, I think that's the key to everything in our business. So
Absolutely.
it's critical. So talk a little bit about in the training that you guys offer. How deep do you get into things like products and all that kind of thing with these students as they go through?
Right now, we do not go deep into products. I
Okay,
think that we try to keep it really, um, really up until the first time homebuyer presentations. We're keeping it really simple and doing exercises that they can actually process the information based on their personal situation. So
good.
there's a lot of that, and then going into the first time homebuyer presentations, which those are like very process oriented, and here's, and then the loan officer, when we do encourage them to share down payment assistance programs. We have a presentation and video and everything on down payment assistance on its own and saving for your down payment. So that's a big piece of it. But then actually going into products, I think it'd be cool to talk about. We talked a little bit about the co-buying and how that's becoming more popular. I bought into a tenancy in common. I think finding more ways to make it affordable and giving people access is a great thing to promote. But it really depends on your market and who you're speaking to.
Well, and that's a wave of the future. I mean, again, property values are going to continue to rise in several markets around the country. Now, I firmly believe that we're going to see property values drop in some markets that are not quite as appealing. But when you think of things like work from home, for example, okay, that's a game changer because Work from home is here to stay for a long time in a lot of industries, and that allows people to work where they want to live. Basically, where you used to vacation now becomes your home office. And in those places, those values are just going to keep going up because demand is going to be through the roof to be there. We see that down in the Panhandle of Florida, where we live here. That values just keep going up. And every time we turn around and go, there's no way people can afford this. More people are buying because this is where they want to be, where other areas are going to have some marked problems. So it's really important that people understand how to be able to buy in those kind of marketplaces. And that's going to be refreshing to have access to the information you guys providing them on how to really, factor in how do you save up to get to that down payment, and what kind of down payment do you need, and what does it all look like? So again, I just really hats off to what you guys are doing. So, Kristin, tell us what can listeners of this program, what can they do to come alongside you guys, to partner with you, to help you guys? Tell us what we can do to help you through this process.
Number one would be either become an ambassador or promote the ambassador program. That's the way that we've funded everything that we've done so far. And it's also a way to bring education into communities across the country. We have over 150 ambassadors now, but we want to get that to 1,000. And so, that would be a huge way. The other way is if you are in a position where you could sponsor a school, sponsor the program, that would be obviously a huge support around adding resources for us. And then lastly, if there's just a connection to a nonprofit or a school, or you want to be involved some way in volunteering, would always love that support and your input as we grow.
So, what have I not asked you that I needed to ask you that people need to know about what you guys are doing? What have we missed here in this conversation? Because I want to make sure that they walk away with a full understanding of what you guys do, so they can support the efforts that you're doing. Because I think this is a huge, huge win for the industry. I think it's, on a personal level, it's a great thing to do, and on a professional level, it's a great thing to do. What are we missing?
Well, I so appreciate that. I think the one thing that I just remember that would be an easy thing to be involved in is sharing the First Home IQ quiz. If you go to firsthomeiq.com/get my score, or you just go to the front page, there'll be a link to check out the quiz. It's a way to educate. You get the questions you got right and wrong at the end, and then you can also, if you're an ambassador, you get your own custom link around that, and you will get emailed anyone's results and name and email address that takes the quiz through your link. So anyway, but even without becoming an ambassador, just share that quiz. It's a really great way to be educating your community. And then I think, just overall would love for anyone to check out the resources that we have. We just released some games and activities for teachers and schools. We have Spanish language resources. So just kind of thinking about, how this would fit into your organization would be really helpful to hear from you. And but yeah, I think we've talked about most of the resources, and I just so appreciate, Dale, your heart and your commitment to that mission overall, and sharing this message.
Of course, anything Kristin Messerli is doing, I'm in. You have done so many great things in the industry over the years, and I was just thinking to myself as you were mentioning that, like, it'd be fun for everybody who's watching this to have their kids fill that survey out, take that
Yes.
test, because we probably think, being in the industry, we've educated our kids pretty well on this stuff. But I know for me, okay, 41-year veteran in the industry, our oldest son was just, we've been telling them, look, you guys, if you want to buy a bigger home, because they have two kids and they're kind of outgrowing their home, we're like, we'll help you. And he called me, he had all these questions, and I'm like, did I never explain these to you? I was thinking, I've done a terrible job. I've trained people all over the world, but I forgot to train my own son on this stuff. So it's really important to do that. And there's a lot of people, and I recommend this to loan officers all the time. One of the key pieces of any great loan officer's marketing today ought to be first-time buyer, programs where they're going out and they're doing education classes to realtors, to their consumers, to their first-time buyers on just home buying. And this is a perfect fit for that can come alongside you guys and help with that. So, and that test is a
Yeah,
great way.
we just had one of our ambassadors have their kid go through our online courses, and he said within the first module, he learned more than he did in his entire high school, of
Awesome.
learning anything around financial literacy. So that's not saying a lot, but where there's an opportunity to really educate just by going through a short online presentation and online course. So anyway, I would love any feedback anybody has as well.
Awesome. Well, this is our chance as a industry to nurture the future customers of ours, to nurture the future generation of homeowners. I would hope that everybody is 100% bought into what you're doing, Kristin. I'm sure that anybody watching is going to want to come alongside and help you guys with what you're doing. Where do they reach out to you? What links do they need to have? Where do they go to find these things? Give us kind of those details, if you would.
Yeah, so you can find out. My personal email is Kristin@FirstHomeIQ.com. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions or ideas or connections. But you can go to our website, FirstHomeIQ.com, and that's where you can access all of our resources, more about our ambassador program. You can go to FirstHomeIQ.com/ambassador, but that's linked on the website where you can see how other ambassadors and leaders are leveraging the resources as well.
Okay, good. Well, Kristin, anything that I personally can do as a speaker and consultant or Mortgage Champions can do, our company can do to help you guys, just let us know. We are 100% behind you. So be glad to help out. This has been just, again, a delightful conversation. Every time I have you on, I have way too much fun.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's been great to chat with you.